Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Thom Cherryhomes. I am the systems operator for a rather unique online service that has popped up here in the last few months. And what I'm basically going to be doing here is giving you a general overview of what this service is, what you can do to get on it, and what you can do as users to help not only get users on the system, but to try and get other machines onto the system as well. So, roughly about a year ago, I'm a recent member of the Plato community, which is a group of people who actually take and preserve these old time-sharing systems. And roughly about a year ago, a handful of the Plato systems engineers actually put together a complete copy of the Plato system that could be paired with an emulator to allow someone to actually run a Plato system. And what I've done over the last few months, finishing up, just basically tidying everything, is try to take and present a version of the Plato system for the retro computing community and the unique aspects of that system therein. Well, what is Plato actually? IRATA.ONLINE is essentially an online service specifically for the retro computing community. And I say this with a very specific use case. The problem with the retro computing community has been that while we have gotten internet connectivity options over the last 10, 15 years in the form of various pieces of hardware, the options for what we've been able to connect to have been extremely limited. Usually limited to maybe single line or a few multi-line BBSs over Telnet, and that's about it. Well, because of what's happened in the Plato community, and because this Plato distribution has now been active, I have been able to take and tailor a version of Plato for the retro computing community. And so what we have here is a system that is not only just a traditional online service in the vein of CompuServe, the Source, Genie, that type of scale. You have a system that can handle multiplayer games, chat forums, everything that you would expect from a time-sharing system of this type to start off with. But with the added bonus that you have a development environment that's baked right into the service so that users can make their own software to run on the system for the benefit of everybody that connects to the system. Now, to give you to really put the point across, the first image that I showed up there was a login screen from the PTerm software that's downloadable from the site. But to show you that vintage machines can also connect to this as well, you see an Atari 800 here with an Atari 850 interface, and the appropriate bridging hardware to connect onto the internet, also able to connect to the service as well. And this really brings home an important point. If we can get terminals written for all of these other machines, it doesn't matter what it is, they can connect and utilize this service as well. Currently we have terminals not just for modern PCs, but we also have them for the Atari 800 as well. And we recently unearthed the terminal for the TI-99/4A, and I'm working on a handful of terminals in progress, and I've got one almost ready for the Commodore 64, for example. So basically, yes, a lot of things are really coming into play here, and I want to take and provide this for every type of system that you can possibly think could be available. Well, what was Plato? Plato it stands for Programmed Logic and Teaching Operations. And thus, as you can infer from the acronym, was a time-sharing system that was designed for computer-based education and was arguably one of the first systems of that type. The first system went online at the University of Illinois in 1962 and was pretty much in continuous operation until Novanet shut down in 2015. So that's incredible longevity there. And the system itself had so many different innovations that were literally brought forth through the years. Things that were not originally intended by the system design, but fell out of the system's design precisely because not only did they provide a way for all these systems to be able to connect together, but for a development environment for its users to be able to take and create new applications. And you're seeing a handful of them up here right now. Right here we have a multi-user dungeon called Avatar, as you can see with a first-person display here. This is the notes functionality, which is threaded forum postings. This first came online in 1973. And right here we have Airfight, which is a 3D flight simulator, which first came online in 1976. So, as well as a whole bunch of educational bits of software as well. Just as an aside, there are roughly about 16,000 pieces of online courseware, educational courseware, that's on my system, that's part of the system that was developed over a period of about 30 years. So, there were a whole bunch of innovations that were literally created and fell out of the design of Plato. You see one of them right here. This is a Plato programmable terminal, also known as a Plato 5 terminal. One thing that you notice here, look at the orange gas plasma display. The gas plasma display was literally created for the Plato project, because at the time, in the mid-1960s, when this was being developed, they wanted to be able to produce a fully graphical display in which you could turn on and off each individual pixel on the display. But with RAM costing $2 a bit, that was a bit cost prohibitive. So they thought outside the box, and why not create a whole new display technology? So the modern gas plasma display that you see today in televisions and the like literally fell out of this project. One thing that that's not almost immediately evident here is that also, in addition to being a flat plasma display, the screen itself is also a touch display. 16 by 16 grid, infrared based, that you could use with your finger. And this was commonly used to navigate the courseware running on the system. Again, very much ahead of its time. So many other innovations as well. The first instances of threaded forum posting in the form of notes. The first multi-user dungeon systems in the form of Avatar and Moria. I mean, just on and on and on. So, basically, I would like to take this moment here to thank the other major extant Plato installation that's out there, cyber1.org. They've been in operation since 2004, and they consist primarily of expatriates of the original Plato systems. They all got together because they wanted to bring back the old system and live on it as their own community and to try and preserve it as much as they could. And to that end, as I said earlier, they produced the Cybus distribution, which basically takes the Plato system and wraps it into a transportable form that can be run inside of an emulator. So if I basically am standing on the shoulders of giants, and these guys work tirelessly to make this possible. If you want more information about what Plato was, the innovations that it had, and the people behind it, I cannot stress enough the importance of buying this book. The author himself worked on this book for roughly about 10 years, and it covers every square inch of Plato, from the hardware to the software to the people that comprise the community that made up the system and why the system was so great in the first place. So, with that, I will stay here for a few moments to give you an idea of what's being emulated here. This system is running on an emulated control data supercomputer. I say that quite literally because the machine itself is a control data Cyber 17865 from roughly 1980 some odd vintage. It's a 60-bit machine, that's 60. The registers and the memory are that size. And the machine itself has approximately 1 megaword of extended core storage, which is used as the swap, and approximately 1 megaword of central processor memory. into which the entire program is actually running. So with this is all being emulated with a piece of software called DT Cyber, also coming from the Cyber1 community, more appropriately from a section of Cyber1 called Control Freaks, which are control data hardware fanatics. And it's able to take and run the Plato system as is, not only run it inside the emulator, but also provide the connections needed to bring it out to the outside world so the terminals can connect to it. So the only other thing that I will say is that I'm using standard commodity PC server hardware in my own lab to run the system, and due to advancements in technology, that emulator, even running at full tilt, which it does all the time, takes up less than 5% of my entire CPU time on that server, and is able to support hundreds of users just fine. So there you go. So now at this point, we will actually take and do a demonstration of the service here. And I'll just give you kind of a quick run through. This is kind of a challenge because normally I give these talks once a week on Saturday and Sunday, and I normally do this within a 2-hour time frame. So I'm having to squeeze this down into roughly an hour. So in order to facilitate that, I'm only gonna speak every other word, if that's okay. Okay, good.
That on speed.
Oh, excellent. So let me go ahead and kill the, I will go ahead and kill the projector here. And I will now duplicate my display so I can see what's going on here, so I'm not having to crane my neck. Come on. Wait a second. What are you doing? Let's try that one more time. Okay, that's actually right. So, hold on a second. There we go. Okay, so how do we get an account on this system? Well, it's really simple. All you have to do is go to the website, www.IRATA.ONLINE. And yes, .online is actually an actual top-level domain. And, oops. So this is what happens when you come in roughly about 5 seconds before you have to present. What's the Wi-Fi path volunteer? Right there, thank you. That's helpful. Yeah, sure. Not like you're going to see anything anyway. Okay. Okay, I think we're good. And yes, I'm getting all the annoying pop-ups. We are connected to the interwebs. All right. So, what we have here when we first... Stop it. Okay. What we have when we first connect here, the tagline, straight and to the point, a community for retro computing enthusiasts. And we have the nice pink sign up button right here. But I'll come back to that in just a moment. Of course, as we know, I'm speaking here at VCF East, but we're going to have another user be speaking at the Classic Game Fest in Austin, Texas on the 27th and 28th with more shows coming up. And as I mentioned before, I take and host demo meets every single week where I take and show the system in depth for people that are interested. So if you're interested, please come by. And you can click on the links and join the meets. About the system, which I've pretty much already done here. A list of features, which I've already kind of gone over. And then you've got the system requirements. And if you have a PC, Mac, or Linux-based machine, all you need is a copy of PTerm for Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. Grab it, download it, install it. Or if you have an Atari 8-bit computer, we have a little list of instructions down here for you to get the cartridge, flash it onto a flash cartridge, set up your 850, and get everything running here. And if you have something else, well, we point you over to the tech section. Once you're there, you take and point over to the IRATA.ONLINE hostname, port 8005, and you have access to the system. Now, one thing of particular note here that's really special, we have a text section right here on the website, and the whole purpose of this text section is to get people who can write terminals all the information that they need to be able to write a terminal to access this service. Because as you'll see in just a moment, this is way beyond ASCII. So to that end, we have complete protocol specifications in ASCII and HTML format here, detailing the protocol from top to bottom. Not only that, but we have example terminal code implementations in C for classic Mac, for Sun Station, a disassembly of the Atari Plato cartridge for 6502, as well as work in progress code for Commodore 64 Plato terminal, and work in progress code for an Atari ST Plato terminal. I want to take and make more of these. We also have source code here for what's called a microtutor interpreter. As I mentioned before, the system has a built-in development environment so that things can run on the mainframe itself. But there's also an added dimension. There's also a variant called microtutor, where parts of programs can run on the local machines themselves, streamed to the local machines and interpreted there. And to that end, I've taken and found the source code for the microPlato interpreters, which right now are in Z80 source code, that can be translated into other machines. We also take and provide, in addition to all of the online tutorials and whatnot are on the system itself, I also take and provide the 2 published books on Tutor, which is the programming language that's used inside the system for reference. So once we actually say, yeah, this sounds neat, let's go ahead and sign up. And this is important here too. Signing up is completely free. There's no access charges. There's nothing else attached to this at all. This is entirely a labor of love. And in point of fact, when I got the code here, I was told very specifically that I could not attach any commercial purpose or entity onto this at all. So this is literally running entirely as a labor of love out of my own pocket. And on top of that, no data collection or any type is actually done other than just doing the initial signups just so I can provision the account and send you the email back. So with that, you have a sign-up form. It's pretty self-explanatory. Full name, email, the desired sign-on that you want, and the group that you want to be in. Now, groups in the system, every user belongs to a group, and it's really nothing more than just a label. But in keeping with the theme of classic computing here, I have set up groups for Atari, Commodore, Amiga, Apple II, TI, etc. Pick one, go. The other thing, Yeah, go ahead. If you have a question, please ask.
You really think it's wise to start a religious war on your system?
That's a good point, and really to the point here. What I am ultimately trying to do with this system here is to provide a big tent for all of the major retro computing religions, as it were, to be able to take and come together under one tent and be able to create something together unique. Because you can't put an Atari 800 onto Facebook, you can't put an Apple II onto Twitter, but you can put them onto this.
So you mentioned the Atari 800
Yes.
terminal emulator.
Yes.
Is that from the actual era of Plato?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Atari actually created a Plato terminal emulator that ran for a particular variant of the Plato service that was called HomeLink. And you can think of HomeLink literally as an analog to CompuServe. It was the service tailored for home usage. And like the time-sharing services of old, you paid through the nose for it. You paid per hour, you paid for disk access, everything. So it's a wonder why it didn't take off.
And that was color, unlike the original terminals, right?
The terminal, okay. So color didn't come into the system until much later, late 80s, early 90s. But even at that point, when they did define color sometime in 1984, 1985, they actually implemented a 24-bit RGB color space when nothing could display it. So very forward thinking. So the only other thing to really note here as far as the sign-up is concerned is that we have a section called author sign-ons. Author sign-ons are kind of special because what they give you an additional account that gives you access to the development environment so that you can write your own software on the system. You become an author on the system. So, you have users, you have authors, you have system staff. And I'm looking for interested people in all three groups. So, once you actually take and sign up, I provision the account, and you get your email back stating that your account is ready. What does this thing look like? Well, once you install your terminal program, or whatever it is you're going to be running, you create a profile, and in that profile, you specify the host name as well as the correct port number, which again is on the website. It's important to follow the instructions on the website for the host and the port. Once you do that, you log in, and here, give me a moment to zoom that out a bit. Already you can see that we've gone way beyond ASCII. This is a fully graphical display. Every single dot can be turned on and off. Text can be placed on any dot position on the screen. We go ahead and log in. Enter our group. And we see the main menu for the system here. And I'm going to do a counterpoint here just to really drive the point across. I'm going to do the same thing in the Atari emulator and log on to the system through there using the Atari cartridge. Please disregard the double echo. It negotiates with the terminal for a minute to ask it what it is, and once that happens, we will see the login screen. And as you can see, pretty much here, save for the painting operations, exactly the same experience. And that's because the system understands what terminal this is and can adjust the output accordingly. Put the right password. Now, of note here too, these individual logos here on the lower right-hand corner of the screen were originally going to be specific to the group that you were logged into. So the Atari users would see the Atari logo, the TI users, the TI logo, etc. The thing was, by the time I got done drawing all of these, I was so damn proud of them, I wanted everybody to see them. So it shows them on random. So, if you actually take, sorry, wrong key there. Let's do that again. Yeah. There's the Apple II logo right there. Notice correct colors. Commodore Chicken Head logo. Atari. Come on. You're in there somewhere. Oh, come on. There's Boing Ball. That one took a while to draw. And there's the next logo. So, yeah. Okay. So, at this particular point right here, one thing to note, of course you have, everything is pretty much self-explanatory here. We have a status view up here, and as well as which menu that we're in. We have the list of menu items here on the left-hand side, as well as keys that we can use to navigate the system. Right now the key that's active is data to replot the screen. Very helpful feature when you're first getting on the system, especially if you're using pterm. Go into the help menu, go to pterm keyboard, and bring up the pterm keyboard window. Because that will give you all of the keys for all of the special keys that were on the Plato keyboard. Since Plato was designed pre-mouse, well, more or less, instead of using the mouse for manipulating things, they used the touch screen and a whole bunch of special keys. Really, to make it as easy as possible, you'll notice that the individual keys themselves are mnemonic. So Control B is back, Control D is data, etc.
What does the Atari do for lack of a touchscreen?
The Atari uses joystick. So if you see, for example, right here, I've got joystick emulation turned on here. It puts up a cross on the screen to show you where you're going to be touching. And when you select something, it gives you a little beep to indicate that you've selected it, and there you go. Conversely, I can also do the same thing over here with the mouse, bam. So your programs can not only have keyboard input, they can have touchscreen input as well, both in terms of coarse grain control and fine grain screen control, as we'll see in just a moment. Now, we'll go ahead and kind of cut right to the chase here and get to some of the games. One of the first things that I'll show you here is Airfight. Airfight was written in 1976 by a grad student at the U of I named Brand Fortner. There was another individual also at U of I by the name of Bruce Artwick, who you may know as the guy who founded Sublogic and did Flight Simulator 1 and 2. He saw this and went off and did Flight Simulator 1 and 2. So we go ahead, pick our squadron, pick our fighter that we want to pick, select here. We'll go ahead and just give ourselves a name here. And it's worth noting that this particular game is a multiplayer game. So the way that this works, multiple players can take and jump on, and you're all inside of a dogfighting simulation. You get to shoot each other down. So go ahead, 5,000 pounds of fuel, 16 missiles, and we've loaded up the plane. Now we're sitting here on the runway. I will take and crank up the throttle a bit. And I will, okay, I will pull back on the stick a little bit. Stop it! I love pop-ups, don't you guys? And once we update, we can see right here that we are indeed flying, and we're flying in first-person perspective. And I apologize, I'm not a very good pilot. I will crash very shortly, but here we go. Bye-bye. And there, I just crashed a $10 million plane. Go me. So that kind of gives you an idea. This game was in operation in 1976 on the U of I campus. So we go ahead, we'll leave. We get the option to take and either exit the system entirely or press a key to basically return. And we're back here at some of the games here. One of the other major games of the system is called Avatar. And you can think of Avatar literally as the first multi-user dungeon.
What happened with the original dungeon? It disappeared?
Huh?
I heard there was an original one, it's called Dungeon, and it disappeared totally?
This is a totally different timeline. Actually, the first multi-user dungeon game that happened on Plato was in 1975 with P-Edit, and this one was in 1976. So very early on. Now, one thing that you'll note here, you'll see this is a very intricate screen design here. And this was actually designed using a screen editor that's part of the system. So not only can coders come in and help make games, but artists can come in and also take and draw on the system utilizing the touchscreen, which in most modern computer contexts usually means the mouse, whatever. So they can take and make very intricate screen displays as well. And we'll go ahead, while this is happening here too, I'll go ahead and launch it over here. Because this is a multiplayer game too, and we're all in the same universe. And you can see even here at 1200 bits per second, the speed here is actually quite manageable. The entire service was literally designed to be used over a 1200 BPS modem.
So what was the game coded in?
The game is coded in a language called Tutor, which I will show in just a moment. Used for the game. So this is literally how you implement bitmap graphics in the system. And the bitmap graphics and the character sets literally work alongside your existing alphanumeric character sets. They don't replace them, so they augment them. Yes. So let's go ahead and go into the game here. We'll see. I've already got my characters defined for both my players here, so I'll just run them. And we already see here, we're dropped into a maze. And you can see here it's running pretty well, and you'll see once I come over here that even at 1200 bits per second, that the game runs pretty well by itself too. Again, thanks to the fact that they're using character set graphics here to define the maze. Extreme performance. And the thing is that we're both in the game together. We could ostensibly run into each other and interact with each other. So, in addition to that, let's go ahead and quit this here. Oops. Sorry. Stop. Continue. These two terminals use totally different keys here. So I'm having to take and do gymnastics back and forth between them. So you get an idea. Right now I've got about 4 pages worth of games that I've pulled off of the tapes and put on the system. This is to start. I want more people to come on the system and help us write more games. For example, since this thing's called Errata, I would love some help to make a multiplayer mule. It can be done in this system.
Now, is it possible to write software in languages other than Tutor, or is Plato a single language operating system?
It is, for most intents and purposes, a single language operating system. The only other major language used on the system is the assembler itself, which is called Compass.
And can you just write stuff in Compass if you feel like it?
If you feel like it, but you don't have to, and I wouldn't recommend it for most people. It's control data instruction sets are interesting to say the least. I mean, to give you an example, the machine's ALU handles arithmetic as 1's complement. So think about that for a second. You have a 0 and a -0, and they're 2 different numbers. So yeah.
Well, they are and they aren't.
Yeah, they are, and that's exactly right. Kind of, sort of, maybe. So for this next bit here, I will actually take and jump into the development environment using my author account. And we'll see that we get a very different interface here. And this is actually the interface that you get if you were to go sign up on Cyber1 and they gave you an account. They drop you straight into the development environment. Now at this point right here, as part of getting an author account, I automatically give you a piece of lesson space that you can use as your initial scratch so you can write stuff in. If you know the name of a lesson or a notes file, you can go directly to it. The fellow game that I'm working on here, for example, we can go and actually go into the code, into the password, and we have right here a complete text editor built into the system for this language. And the way that programs are set up on the system, programs are called lessons. Lessons are divided into parts, which you can think of as disk sectors, and those parts are divided into individual blocks of code. Now, if you, sorry, yes? Okay. So once you actually get in here, selecting a block will show you that bit of code. Let's actually go up a page real quick, and I'll go into the drawing subroutine because I want to illustrate a point here.
Is there any way to make the screen a little bit bigger? It's a bit of an eye test per vector.
That's as big as I can make it.
All right.
Okay. So, one thing to note right here, this is Tutor. And as you can see, if you've worked in other programming languages before, it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of like BASIC, except you've got some structured programming techniques. You've got units, you've got while loops and other types of looping constructs and things whatnot. One thing to note, especially about the editor here, these line numbers are relative. They don't change. If you scroll up or scroll down, those line numbers actually stay the same, and they're only in context of what you're editing in that window at that moment. So that's how you select lines and things to move around, that sort of thing. Now, if you take a look down here at the bottom of the screen here, you'll actually see that you're seeing some of the custom characters that I've made for the Othello game actually being used here. I'm drawing the Othello pieces, and these are the custom character sets, and you can literally use them using the font key directly inside the editor themselves. Now, let's say we're editing a piece of code here, and I want to take and change. I'm currently changing that one, the last line there. And I'm wanting to say I want to change mode, and I'm like, oh crap, what mode? Mode. What actually goes with mode? Well, the system has what are called terms, and if you press the term key, you get a little prompt down here at the bottom that says what term. Well, you can think of terms literally as desk accessories on steroids. These are functions in the system that are available throughout the entire system, no matter where you are. And one of the most helpful ones in this case is the help command. If we go ahead and push help and type in a particular command, tutor command that we're looking at, we get context-sensitive help right there in the editor window. And again, this is mid-1970s. And not only has it done that, but it has dropped me back to what I was doing before. And so I just continue typing. Okay, I'm going to use rewrite. And continue on. Bam, and that's all she wrote right there. I didn't break my concentration, anything else. So I'll go ahead and delete that real quick. Bam. Now, in addition to that, you also have the big guide as well. And since I went into the big guide from the editor, it assumes I want to know about a particular command. So I will pick, say, draw, for example. Now the guide is like pretty much everything else in the system. It's written in Tutor, and because of that, the lessons themselves are not only informative, they're also reasonably interactive as well. The T in Plato, remember, stands for teaching, and they took that quite seriously. They wanted you to understand how the system worked exactly. And so on, and so on, and so on. In fact, in my 30-plus years of working in computing professionally, this is among some of the best documentation I've ever seen on a system in my life. So we can go ahead and say, okay, we've got the idea here. We can go back. And as we go back, we'll start zooming out of the documentation into more and more of the system. Right now we're looking at all of the display commands. And yet, as you can see, even here in the display command section, you have a whole set of interesting display commands for everything under the sun, not counting, for example, if you go into section T right here, which is graphing, which basically gives you something the likes of Mathematica built right into the language right there. So they meant it for serious use as well. So not only that, but you also have things like delay, catch up, and pause, specifically for timing synchronization. Because remember, this is being streamed over a terminal. So you can, for example, take and display something, ask for the system to wait for the terminal to catch up, and then set a timer. So you can actually say, okay, once the user sees something, wait 5 seconds, and then go on. And it will actually display it, wait for the terminal to catch up, wait 5 seconds, catch up. So it goes a long way to try and overcome the difficulties of trying to display full-screen interactive material over a terminal. So in addition to the code editors that we have here, we also have character set editors. For example, we'll look at the character set, block C here, which is a character set block, and we'll look at the character sets here. Now, this is a visual editor. It gives you a lot of useful functions, such as how many character slots have you used so far? Well, so far I've used approximately 16 characters to define my 2 Othello pieces right there. You can see where they are. You can also see what else you have available in the alternate character set. Bam, there you go. Gives you an idea of what you have left. You have the ability to edit single characters. And as you can see here, a visual character set editor. And actually, for this next bit, I'm going to really just drive the point home like crazy. And I'm going to invoke a little special command here, a term command. Anybody can use it, called talk. And I'm going to talk over here to user Bob over here on the right-hand side. Now, once that happens, I get a request here to talk, and I can answer it. I press the term key to answer it and type talk. Oop, come on. Come on. Oh, come on. Come on. Okay. Are you? I think, no. Okay. Damn it. All right, you know what? I'll do this from the other side. What the? Why are you not? Okay. Looks like the demo gods are not being favorable to me right now. Yeah. Never mind. I will try this one last time from the other side. We'll log back in and just do it from the other side here.
What do you mean by the other side?
I'm gonna have him initiate the talk, and I'm gonna do it from the other side here because for some reason the term. I usually use my big keyboard when I'm typing here. I'm thinking that it's an FN key conflict that's happening here. Much apologies, but just bear with me for a moment. Now, one thing I will mention here is that, oh, come on. Type and go. Okay. Since I was last in the games menu, when I logged off, it automatically put me back where I was in the games menu automatically. The system can keep track of all of that, and your programs can leverage that type of information. So there's a lot of persistence options in that regard. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do the talk command here. It let me type it. Okay, why didn't you let me respond to it like that? Okay. Here we go.
Your author on the left.
Oh yeah, author, that's right, yes. Thank you.
Is this not Y2K compliant?
No, it is not, and that's why the date is 1990. I had to find a date where the day of the week would match up. Fun times. So, okay, so now I see the term talk here. I go ahead and answer it over here, talk. And now we both have a one-line chat session here that we can say, okay, hi, Bob. And you'll notice that it works as you type, too. So any backspaces, anything that happens there, that comes across as well. But there's also another feature here that's available in term talk that's not immediately evident. You'll notice that there are keys here to clear the line and to exit, but there's a key here for monitor mode. Well, what's monitor mode? If I take and press monitor mode here on the left-hand side, then all of a sudden, the guy on the right is going to see what's on the left-hand side of the screen here. So if I literally screen sharing built into the system, available between any 2 users or in conferencing mode, any 16 users passing the baton back and forth appropriately. Amazing, isn't it? So we have here a visual character set editor in which we can take and draw all the individual pieces of the bitmap. But we also have here the let me go ahead and back out here. We also have multiple character mode. I apologize for the display corruption that's about to happen on the right-hand side. I'm experimenting with flow control options, and I don't have it quite dialed in yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together the pieces of my Othello piece here, which is made up of 2 rows of 4 pieces each. Oop. Pardon, get up And you can see as I'm doing it that it's building a preview for me over on the right-hand side. So if I go ahead and press data when finished here, yeah, this is not going to draw all the way through, and I apologize. It's because I'm experimenting with flow control options here, and it's missing some of the data. But as you can see right here, we have a full-blown bitmap editor here in which we can take and edit multiple characters at once and do much larger images if we want to handle bitmap graphics in that way. We also have
So like you're making a bitmap graphic that is itself made of other bitmaps.
it's a bitmap graphic that is sliced up into individual characters.
So it's going to use these concepts for
Yes.
bitmap graphics like C64.
Similar.
You can use.
Yeah, it's the same techniques.
Uh-huh.
The big difference here is that the character set on Plato, instead of being 8 by 8, for example,
Yeah.
it's 8 by 16.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So let's go ahead. I will take them back out here. And you can see that the screen sharing is just going here. Now that we're connected into monitor mode, until I actually break out of it, no matter where I go, he's going to see what I see. So I'll go ahead and just break. I'll go ahead and just break it here by using the term talk command, and then shift back to exit out and kill the monitor mode, and we will actually be back where we were before, as you can see. So in addition to that, I was to say, but wait, there's actually more. You'll notice, for example, these letters right here. This looks like it's done with just line graphics, and you could do it that way. But there actually is a facility on the system, in addition to character sets, called line sets. And the simplest way I can describe a line set is a proportional font. They were thinking in terms of proportional fonts in the mid-1970s. So, as an example here, we'll go to a lesson that has the font that I'm using all over the site here, the errata font, and we will look at it. And again, similar options as the character sets before, how many slots used, how many slots available, and then we've got normal and large grid line care design. Well, since I'm using the large grid line care design for these, so I'll take a look at D here, and let's look at the letter A. And as you can see right here, a full-blown proportional font editor that you can use to take and draw very intricate font work if you wanted. Furthermore, once you do that, the system loads that line set into memory and draws it out when you draw text in any other size other than the normal size. So, as an example, if we go ahead and go into Lab to try out these line cares, there's an option here to do so, we can actually look at them. Let's look at them in size 1 here, put them roughly in the middle of the screen, and we can see as we start typing, see? All done on the fly. And so, yeah, these guys were really, really forward thinking. Not only do you have that, but you have the ability, let's go ahead and look in the menu code real quick. You have the ability to do intricate screen drawing as well. And I use this to great effect on the various systems, on the various parts of the menu here, for example. We'll go into one of the logo pages here, and we'll actually see a whole series of drawing commands. And one of the things that you can do, actually, is I'm going to pick something else because this will actually spill off the screen real quick. Damn me for improvising. Let's see, menu games, sure. Let's look here real quick. Yeah, okay. So we have a little chunk of drawing code right here that was actually output from the screen editor. I can take and bring that back in, right, by issuing the appropriate command and saying, hold on a second, actually, there we go, just a little bit further. Yeah, there we go. let's do line 6 through lines 24. Now at this particular point, it will take and bring that drawing in so that I can modify it. And I can use the touchscreen to take and modify the graphics appropriately. I can take and draw new graphics, whatever, say I want to take and draw a box, okay, no problem, bam. Opposite corner, bam, thickness, standard thickness, there we go. I can modify individual points. Everything that you would expect from a vector graphics editor is pretty much in here and able to be used. You can also issue paint commands as well to fill everything in, which is how everything works on the menu pages. Once you're done, you can then back out and the system will automatically update the code for you. So it goes in both directions. So as I said before, not only can the coders get in on the action, but the artists can also help as well.
So,
And you can share the screen and help each other.
Collaboration, absolutely. Yes.
Awesome. How about sound?
Huh?
How about sound?
Son?
Sound.
Sound is, sound was one thing that was never really fully explored on the system, with the exception of devices that plugged into the terminals like the Gooch Synthetic Woodwind. P-Term does offer an emulation of it, and some programs actually do use it, but sound for most things isn't there. That isn't to say that we couldn't implement something over the top of it, because the protocol has plenty of spaces to where you can talk to external devices. I mean, good God, the possibilities are absolutely endless. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of back out here. And that kind of concludes my initial demonstration here, but I hoped that this would give you kind of a good example of the power of the system.
a couple of quick questions. So
Yes.
one is, so the vector primitives that are in the code,
Yes.
I assume that in some sort of a binary form is essentially the messages that are also being sent to the terminal. I mean, it's at
Essentially-
that level of granularity.
Yeah, essentially point and line drawing commands.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Point, line drawing, and alphanumeric. Yeah, go ahead, yes.
What does the operator side look like? You said there's
If I were at my console, I could actually show you, but I do not expose that firewall out to the internet for obvious reasons, so yeah. Essentially, the operator's console looks, if you've ever seen a CDC 6600 with the double scopes, that's what you're looking at. Yeah.
So you said it would actually fill in regions. Does that mean there was actually a flood fill algorithm?
There was a flood fill algorithm that you could implement at the terminal level. So yeah, it's a shallow depth. Yeah.
It was code that would run on the terminal.
Yeah, it's just you get a paint command with a particular region to start at, and there's an algorithm that's specified that we implement in P-term that other terminals can implement as well. That does it correctly. So yeah.
How much memory does a minimal Plato terminal need to operate?
That depends, because that depends on how you implement it. Because if you were to look at it from a hardware perspective, the Plato terminal specifies a 512 by 512 screen. And to get that onto other machines, you'll have to either scale it up or scale that down. So however you do that depends on how much memory that you will ultimately use. You'll also need memory for the character sets, 2K for the character sets, and that gets streamed and other things as well.
For the line character sets, or those resident?
Those are not resident on the terminal. Those are actually streamed from the system as line commands. So yeah, so that's essentially it in a nutshell. So that brings me to the last little bit of this. Did I close my OBS? Of course I did. Okay, give me a moment here to get back to where I was. And so that essentially takes us to the types of opportunities that people can have on the system. And we've got several different types of people that I really see that could see use in the system. Users, of course, and we need authors to help write content. But we also need system staff to help administer the system as well. I'm doing an okay job right now, but I would like some help at some point. We also want interested archaeologists, because the Plato system guys did not throw anything away. Give you an example of this. The PCD2 authoring system. that was used to write the Plato courseware disks for the TI-99-4A and the Apple II is sitting on my system. It's just there. But it needs to be looked at, it needs to be fixed, etc., made work, whatever. It's all there. There are facilities for connecting up multiple Plato systems. That needs to be investigated and revived. There are facilities for interchanging data to and off of the system. That needs to be revived, etc. Yes?
I was actually going, I forget what was the question about. Oh, it's sort of related to that. How much of, it's the question about Plato, how much of the, of it was written in Tutor itself versus how much was written in Compass?
Approximately 80%.
Tutor?
Tutor, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, only the lowest level system functions were written in Compass. So, I mean, of course, what we need here, we need users, we need authors, and most importantly, we need terminal programs. We need terminal programs for all these systems and more. And what I will do for anybody who will take and help, I will bend over backwards to help facilitate any information that you need and any code help that you may need, especially on the protocol side, to make this possible. So, because right now I'm finishing up implementation of several terminals, including an Android terminal. I've got it actually running over here on my phone. And, you know, so I have the protocol in my head, and I can answer questions about how the system works. So to that effect here, I'll basically leave with thanking all of these people here, especially my wife and my daughter for putting up with my obsessions and allowing me to work on this. Thom Hunter, who runs Control Freaks, who is a wealth of information on control data hardware. Joe Stanton, Paul Koning, Steve Peltz, Steve Cox, and Steve Zoppi over on CyberOne for being the support mechanism over there at CyberOne. Without them, this would not be possible. Michael Sternberg, who helped implement who's actually in the process right now of disassembling the Atari cartridge. We're about 90% done with that, fully commenting it from top to bottom. Of course, Jeff Thiel, one of our users who will be demonstrating the system in a couple of months at CGF in Austin. And of course, Evan for asking me and letting me come up here and talk about this to you guys, because I think this is the most awesome thing since sliced bread. And I think all the users who have come on since I started this thing just a few months ago and are helping make this thing really an amazing system to use. And of course, if you want to know more, go to IRATA.ONLINE. It's all there. And of course, I'm pretty much available 24/7 to take and help facilitate any questions that anybody might actually have. And with that, thank you guys very much. Right under the wire.